WADR. Promoting dialogue.
Good afternoon and many thanks for tuning into West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM and around the world on WADR.org. Welcome to Newslink. Here are the top stories. Nigeria's President-elect Tinubu returns to the country after 36 days out of public view.
I've not consulted people yet, and I'm in administration, you said. It's not run alone. You don't govern alone. You govern with people. You consult, assemble, and then hit the ground running.
Senegal's Idrissa Seck resigns as head of council for the 2024 presidential bid. The World Bank pays $372 million to cover Ghana's Eurobond amid debt moratorium. And the Burkina Faso government warns of looming food crisis affecting 2.2 million people across the country. Details of these stories and more coming up. Stay with us.
Here is James Adjapong with Newslink.
Glad to have you join us this afternoon. Our top story takes us to Nigeria as the President-elect Bola Ahmed Tinubu returns to the country after being away from public view for around 36 days since winning the elections in February. Speculations about his whereabouts had been circulating, with some political opponents alleging that he was seriously ill. He addressed the media and supporters who had gathered at the airport to welcome him on Monday evening, confirming that he was not unwell but fit to take on the challenges of governance ahead. Our Abuja correspondent Usman Umar reports.
The president-elect had jetted out of Nigeria to France on March 21, a trip his campaign council said was meant for him to take a rest and plan ahead of his inauguration on May 29. A statement by the APC Presidential Campaign Council in March noted that Tinubu traveled to France to rest and plan his transition program after a very exhaustive campaign and election season. But the opposition camp had rejected that explanation, alleging a cover-up of a serious illness the president-elect is battling. Total silence from the president-elect himself throughout this period only helped to fuel the rumors. But upon arrival at the Nnamdi Azikiwe International Airport in Abuja, Mr. Tinubu clears the air.
Whatever they like, they speculate. I'm healthy as sun, and I'm okay.
While responding to how far nominations for membership of his cabinet have gone, the president-elect said he has not constituted his cabinet yet, but assured that he can't govern alone. Hence, when the time comes, he will get capable hands to help deliver the onerous task of governance.
I've not consulted people yet, and I'm in administration, you said. It's not run alone. You don't govern alone. You govern with people. You consult, assemble, and then hit the ground running.
Mr. Tinubu's age and the challenge of failing health that comes with it have been a subject of speculation since he declared his intention to run for the presidency. As it seems, these speculations will form a larger part of talking points throughout his tenure. For now, Nigerians await 29th May when he will take over the reins of leadership of a country greatly challenged by worsening security situation, deteriorating economy, and a country sharply divided along ethno-religious lines. For Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, Usman Umar reporting from Abuja.
We are back home in Senegal as the Senegalese presidency announced that Idrissa Seck has been relieved of his duties as head of the Economic, Social and Environmental Council, thereby opening the way for his candidacy in the presidential election scheduled for February 2024. Seck, a former prime minister who secured 21% of the vote and came second in the 2019 presidential race, leads the Remy party, which later joined the ruling Benobok-Yakar coalition led by President Macky Sall. Imo Edit brings us more details on this developing story.
Seck announced his resignation from the council and his intention to run for president again on Saturday. He joins two other declared candidates, former Prime Minister Aminata Toure and opposition leader Ousmane Sonko. Seck's candidacy also means that his party will withdraw from the ruling coalition, although it is uncertain how this will affect the coalition's majority in parliament. Political tensions are high in Senegal, with President Sall's refusal to roll out a third term sparking sometimes violent demonstrations. The country's constitution only allows for 2 terms, but some fear that Sall will use recent changes to the constitution to extend his mandate. As a result, the anti-Macky Sall coalition, Le Mouvement de Force Vive du Senegal, Le F24, was formed less than 2 weeks ago. Sonko's supporters have also protested court proceedings against him, which they say are politically motivated to hinder his presidential campaign. Whilst they condemned the unrest in his announcement, he also stated his belief that Sonko should be allowed to run. He added that disagreements can be openly expressed in Senegal, but it is unacceptable to silence others through persecution, one-sided thinking, intellectual terrorism, and violence.
Imo filed that report.
Fresh and breaking news all the time. Hear it first as the news breaks, only on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
If you are just tuning in, this is Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM and around the world on WADR.org. We now shift our attention to Liberia, where a one-day dialogue session was recently held in Monrovia to dissuade the youth from engaging in acts of violence in the lead-up to the 2023 elections. The event, which was organized by the Liberia Peace Building Office in conjunction with ECOWAS, the West African Regional Organization, and the Catholic Relief Service, ended with a call to the youth to safeguard their future by avoiding any form of violence during the electoral process. WADR's Darlington Pogba in Monrovia reports.
At the end of the ECOWAS Forum, Ambassador Joseph Nkrumah emphasized the importance of young people in maintaining the peace and stability in the country, even in the face of provocation during elections.
I believe strongly that we also believe that as the youth, we have a common destiny and a common destination. A common destination being we want to be the recipients and the beneficiaries of the dividends of our natural resources, the dividends of good governance and democracy. And whilst we may have different paths to arriving at that, or whilst we may have different opinions on how we will get there, we must remember that there is one goal, a better Liberia, for not just you as we sit here, not just you in the future, but also for the generations that are to come.
Similarly, Edward Moba, the Executive Director of Liberia Peace Building Office, cautioned the youth against allowing anyone to manipulate them for political gain. The future of Liberia is critical for everyone, and that the youth must protect the country's peace at all times.
Your future can become hijacked, it can be hampered, it can be delayed if you don't get constructively engaged. Liberia will not enjoy peace. Liberia will not consolidate peace. Liberia's future will be blind if you don't play the role you as young people need to play. And if we who are parents, we who are in government, if we don't create an opportunity for you, Liberia peace consolidation efforts will be blind.
The forum, which was held under the theme Youth Dialogue to Promote Non-Violence and Peaceful Elections, brought together young people from across the country. For Newslink on WADR, I am Darlington Pogba reporting from Monrovia.
Our focus now turns to Ghana, as the International Development Association, IDA, of the World Bank has made a guarantee payment of $372 million on behalf of the government to cover the Eurobond. This comes after the government of Ghana defaulted on its coupon payment for the 2030 Eurobond on April 14, 2023 due to the debt moratorium declared on December 19, 2022. As Atiawini Bella Lawson in Accra report, the payment was made on April 20th, 2023.
In 2015, Ghana turned to the World Bank for assistance as it faced challenging market conditions, high debt levels that were due soon, and a lack of access to international financial markets. The Ministry of Finance requested a policy-based guarantee and credit from the International Development Association, IDA, to raise the necessary funds to pay off upcoming debts. To help Ghana, the IDA provided a policy-based guarantee that enabled the country to issue a $1 billion Eurobond series due in 2030. The guarantee covered up to $400 million in both principal and interest, and Ghana used the proceeds to refinance its existing debt. Over time, the government bought back and cancelled $70 million of the 2030 Eurobond, which lowered the guarantee amount to $372 million. The funds raised through the Eurobond issuance allowed Ghana to refinance its existing debt at a lower interest rate of 10.75% and extend the maturity of its debt from 90 days to 2 years on average. However, in December 2022, the Ministry of Finance declared a moratorium on certain categories of its external debt, including Eurobonds, due to significant economic, financial, and social pressures. As a result, the majority of its domestic debt was restructured and debt treatment under the G20 Common Framework was requested.
Atiawene Bella Lawson with that report. In Guinea, the trade union movement is calling for a significant increase in all salaries of both public and private sector employees. They are specifically demanding a 100% raise for civil servants in the public administration and a 70% raise for private sector workers. To convey their demands to the transitional government, they have submitted a platform of proposals. The union leaders emphasize that if their demands are not met soon, they may launch a general strike across all public and private administrations. Chano Afai Ibrahim Abade has more details in this report voiced by Marty C.
The situation in Guinea is tense, with various political and social forces making demands on the transitional authorities. One group that is particularly active in the trade union movement has presented a platform of demands to the Minister of Labour. Boubacar Biro Bari is a member of the trade union movement.
We are advocating for a revaluation of the index point value, resulting in a 100% increase for all civil servants within the administration, irrespective of their hierarchy. We are also pushing for a renegotiation of past agreements within the private sector to grant a maximum 70% increase for private sector workers.
According to Boubacar Biro Bari, they are demanding the satisfaction of certain preconditions before they agree to sit down with the government at the negotiating table. It is unclear at this time what these preconditions are, but the trade unionists are standing firm.
We have made it clear that in order for negotiation to proceed, the 6 points that were left unsatisfied in the 2022 agreement protocol must be addressed.
Barry warned that the Ghanaian trade union movement is not ruling out a general and unlimited strike. This could have serious consequences for the country's economy as well as for the welfare of the population as a whole.
In
the event that there is no progress, our only option is to resort to strikes, which is why we are urging each central office to raise awareness among its workers. These problems are affecting everyone, and Guinean workers are suffering in poverty. We must acknowledge this fact and understand that we cannot compare ourselves to workers in other parts of the sub-region.
Presently, the government has not responded to the trade unionist demands, but it is expected that the issue will be discussed at an interministerial council meeting scheduled for Tuesday, and it is likely to be closely watched by both domestic and international observers.
Chano Afai Ibrahim Abade filed that report, voiced by Marty C. You are listening to Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting from Dakar, Senegal. Here is a reminder of our top stories. Nigeria's President-elect Tinubu returns to the country after 30 days out of public view. Senegal's Idrissa Seck resigns as head of council for the 2024 presidential bid. The World Bank pays $372 million to cover Ghana's Eurobond amid debt moratorium. And the Burkina government warns of looming food crisis affecting 2.2 million people across the country. Still ahead, we have our newspaper review, guest interview, and some sports update. Kindly stay with us.
West Africa Democracy Radio. It's you speaking.
It's 14 minutes past 12 in our studios, and here is West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM. This is Newslink, covering all the news around the sub-region. The Burkina government on Monday said almost 2.2 million people, including internally displaced persons, will face a food crisis in 2023, which accounts for about 9.9% of the country's population. According to the Minister of Agriculture, Animal and Fisheries Resources, Denis Ouedraogo, who revealed these figures during the first 2023 session of the Ministerial Sector Board of Directors meeting, The final cereal and food balance sheet from the 2022 to 2023 agricultural campaign shows a gross deficit of 72,387 tons of cereals, equivalent to 2% of the national demand. Okay, Obiarika has more details.
The Minister of Agriculture and Animal Resources, who provided an update on the country's agricultural sector, revealed that there are 5 deficit regions, 2 regions in balance, and 6 surplus regions in terms of cereal needs. The dietary energy supply per person per day has increased by 10.7% compared to the previous consumption year. WADR Ogo also noted that the 2022 to 2023 agricultural campaign faced challenges due to persistent terrorist attacks, which caused technical services to be inaccessible in certain areas, massive displacement of agricultural populations, and abandonment of areas and factors of production. He added that the manifestations of climate change, such as floods, have caused losses in agro-pastoral production. WADR Ogo expressed cautious optimism about the prospects of the agricultural sector in Burkina Faso, despite the challenges it faces. He stressed the need for continued investment, innovation, and collaboration to ensure the sector's sustainable growth and contribution to the country's development goals. Despite these challenges, national cereal production stood at 5.18 million tons, which is an 11.11% increase compared to the previous crop year and the average of the last 5 years. The agriculture sector is a significant contributor to Burkina Faso's economy, representing more than 30% of the country's GDP and providing jobs and foreign currency after gold.
Oge Obiarika filed that report.
This is the newspaper review. Stay on top of the news. Get the most important stories with added insight and concise review.
This is the newspaper review.
Up next, we have our press stories from Monrovia with WADR's Darlington Pogba.
Tuesday, April 25, 2023, press review edition focus on the 4 newspapers from Liberia. They are the Independent newspaper, the Front Page Africa newspaper, the News newspaper, and the Hot Pepper newspaper. Our first stop is the Independent newspaper with this bold banner headline: "We could win second term, Economic Intelligence Report reveals." And we see the photograph of President George Weah and scores of his supporters on the front page of the Independent newspaper. Flip to the back page quickly. Trouble rocks PLP, that's the People Liberation Party. Several executives suspended. Land dispute triggers tension in Maigibi, as men believed to be AFL prisoner causes stirs. Stay on the back page of the Independent newspaper. Drug arrested again, as high-grade marijuana caught with man 25. From the Independent newspaper, we move over to the Front Page Africa newspaper. Treating citizens with neglect, and we see the photograph of United States Ambassador to Liberia, Michael McCarthy. Still on the front page of the Front Page Africa newspaper, getting close to stable electricity. On the back page of the Front Page Africa newspaper is all about sports. The News newspaper is next. Remain focused. Weah tells cabinet a special meeting. Liberians treated with neglect. U.S. Ambassador talks tough again. And we see the photograph of United States Ambassador Michael McCarthy on this one. On the back page of the News newspaper, LEC announces load sharing, says every community will be affected. Liberia massively reduces malaria, celebrates World Malaria Day today. Bridge Liberia donates books to Gbamenta Primary School. LMP NAP's notorious schemer. With that, we conclude the review of the newspaper, which will take us now to our last stop for today's edition of Press Review, which happens to be the Hot Pepper newspaper. Political syndicate. Michael McCarthy exposes legislature, health and internal affairs ministries. In cabinet meeting opening, Grand Bassa County praises President Weah for development mark. Human Rights 75 campaign launched in Liberia, which emphasized the right to freedom of peaceful assembly and association. We leave it right there. With that, we conclude today's edition of Press Review. But before we go, these are the newspapers we actually followed on today's edition. We followed the Independent newspaper, the Front Page Africa newspaper, the newspaper, and the Hot Pepper newspaper was our last stop. On that note, we'd love to say thank you so much for following and bye-bye.
Thank you, Darlington, for that newspaper review.
Politics,
Analysis on major news,
social matters, and all. This is A Guest.
The guest interview today focuses on Idrissa Seck's resignation as the leader of the Remy party from Macky Sall's government as he pursues his presidential bid. Notably, this is the second time a key political figure has broken away from the Bonobok-Yaka coalition following former Prime Minister Aminata Touré's distancing from Macky Sall and his party after being elected from the presidential camp during the July legislative elections. Some sections of the populace are questioning whether this is yet another sign of President Macky Sall's declining popularity, given his lack of clarity on whether he will seek a third term in office or not. Our guest, Mamadou Cho, provides insight on how this resignation could impact the political structure of the Bonobok-Yaka coalition and its strategy toward the upcoming February 2024 elections.
It's not quite a surprise because when Idrissa Seck joined Macky Sall in November 2020, people were expecting him to be the candidate for the what we call the majority Bonobok-Yaka because people were convinced then that even if Macky Sall didn't make it clearly, Idrissa Seck would be his candidate because he wasn't running or seeking a third term. So that's why it's quite not a big surprise. When we look at it closely.
So at this stage, does it send a signal to President Macky Sall that he's subtly getting unpopular and that he may not attain the political trust he is looking for right now, that there are tensions in the space, whether or not he would be seeking a third term or not?
Yeah, indeed. He's even putting pressure on President Macky Sall. Because, what is happening, he left the Bonobok-Yaka with his two ministers. And what people are not talking about a lot, he has one MP, a member of parliament at the National Assembly. And when you look at how the majority is tricky right now, it's mean in case this single MP of Idrissa Seck at the National Assembly decided to join what we call the opposition, the new, friends of Idrissa Seck, it means Bonobok-Yaka will be losing his majority. So this is a political tool for Idrissa Seck, maybe to put more pressure on President Macky Sall, and even in case, bringing him to make it clear that he won't be, running for a third term, and this can give him maybe chances for the 2024 presidential election.
So finally, let's get to the coalition of Bonobok-Yaka. Should this break away by key persons? Of course, the first one was Aminata Touré, the former prime minister, and now Idrissa Seck. Does it send a signal that they should re-evaluate and re-strategize towards the February 2024 elections?
Yeah, the closer we get, the harder it will be for President Macky Sall to decide. So that's why he should be decided right now, making it clear. But even his closest friend, do not know what his intentions are. And at the other time, if there are people among his circle who want to run, they are impatient. And, the closer we get, they know that the chances are lower for them to make it for next year's presidency election. So it's high time for him to come out and say what his intentions are, if he's running or not, and that will have at least will clear the way for people in his circle who want to support him or want to, run for presidential election next year.
Mamadou Cho is a Senegalese political analyst. And here is Ankole Janko with some sports updates.
Hello out there, a warm welcome and thank you for joining us. The Basketball Africa League Ball on Monday announced the dates and teams to compete in the next major competition. Ball revealed a list of 6 teams that will compete in the league's Nile Conference Group phase from April 26 to May 6 at Hassan Mustafa in the Sports Complex in Cairo, Egypt. The 6 teams: Al Ahly of Egypt, Cape Town Tigers of South Africa, City Oilers of Uganda, Club Atletico Petroleos de Luanda of Angola, Club Ferrorio de Bahia, CFC Bahia of Mozambique, and Sidu Legacy Athletic Club of Guinea. The group phase will collectively feature 78 players from 15 countries across Africa, Ozoni and the US, including 2 former NBA players, according to the Ball official website. Top 4 teams from the Nile Conference Group phase will join Abidjan's Basketball Club, Fighters of Cote d'Ivoire, AS Douanes of Senegal, Rwanda's Rwanda Energy Group, and Stade Malien of Mali in the ball playoffs, which will feature a single elimination tournament and finals at BK Arena in Kigali, Rwanda in May. And that's it for sports. It's back to you.
Thank you, Sankule, for that sports update. We have come to the end of this edition of Newslink from West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting from Dakar, Senegal. Thank you for listening. And many thanks to our listeners in the Gambia via Hot 104.3 FM and in Liberia via Alternative Youth Radio 98.9 FM Lofa County and in Ghana Royals FM 104.7 when Chi Christian Mukidi has been exceptional on the console. Many thanks to Mustafa Sek for our Facebook live coverage. Do interact with us via our social media platforms on Twitter and Instagram at WADR News and on Facebook West Africa Democracy Radio English Service. I am James Adjapong. Good afternoon.
Talk, music, get it all 24 hours on West Africa Democracy Radio 94.9 FM Dakar.